Hey guys, I'm just going to record this reading for you, just in case. Pecos Bill was a cowboy. Pecos Bill's wild ride. Right, there's only one Pecos Bill, and it's his wild ride. So I put my S, otherwise it sounds funny, right? Pecos Bill wild ride. I need it. Pecos Bills, right? His name is Pecos Bills. Bill is his last name. Apostrophe S because it's his wild ride. Pecos Bills was a cowboy. Pecos Bill, after all that, Pecos Bill was a cowboy. Perhaps it would be better to say that Pecos Bill was the cowboy. No one threw a rope faster or rode a bronco longer than Bill. He could lasso a steer and have it ready to brand before the lariat was off his saddle horn. So I'm going to pause right there. So when I brand an animal, I take a hot piece of metal that I heated up in the fire, and I touch it on its skin, and it kind of leaves like a mark. So a lariat is the rope. A lasso is what we would call it also, right? And his saddle horn, the saddle where they sit on the horse, has a little handle, and I call that my horn. Once he got on a wild horse at dawn and was still riding this when the tame beast finally bedded down for the night, right? Cowboys like to break horses. They get on a horse that's never been ridden, and it tries to kick them off. So he was on this wild horse at morning and dawn when the sun came up, and still riding the tame beast when he bedded down, when he went to sleep that night. Of course, that was a week later. Bill himself would be glad to tell you that he was the original cowboy and that the others were just copies, and he'd be saying it in all modesty. There was one time Pecos Bill was thrown. Right, when I get kicked off a horse, I get thrown off a horse. Of course, no cowhand likes to confess to being tossed off his mount. Still, even Bill would likely admit that to this particular tumble. He might even tell the tale with pride. It happened on the day Pecos Bill invented the rodeo. Bill was riding the trail with a group of cow herds. They were telling stories about their wild rides. To Bill, their accounts had the taste of whoppers about them. He wasn't about to accuse anyone of telling lies, though, so he kept this feeling to himself. It was just then that the weather changed. The wind picked up, and the sky took an unusual shade of yellow. Turning in his saddle, Bill saw a big black twister, a tornado, bearing down on the herd. He could hear an odd sound like a cross between a freight train and a bear's growl. The noise got louder as the storm approached. "I reckon there's a tornado coming our way," he remarked. "You boys round up the herd. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to take a little ride of my own. Don't wait up." With that, Bill headed back down the trail toward the roaring storm. While he rode, he took his lasso off the saddle, his lariat, off the saddle horn, and began spinning it above his head. As the lasso spun, Bill played out a little more rope and then a little more again. So when I let loose and give it a little more room, I play it out. When the loop was about as big as a Texas watermelon, he gave his wrist a snap. The lasso sailed up till it was about level with a mountaintop. Bill gave his wrist another flick, and the noose dropped down neatly over the neck of the twister. With a shout, Bill made a mighty leap and landed squarely on the tornado's back. Right away, that whirlwind started rearing and bucking. It lost interest in the herd of cattle on the trail and took off in a northwesterly direction at a gallop. In its mad dash, it pulled up trees, mowed down prairie grass, and cut a trench across the dry, flat lands. Later, water started flowing through that trench, and people took to calling it the Pecos River in honor of Bill's ride. All the while, Bill kept his seat. He pressed his knees into the side of his stormy steed. Steed is another name for a horse or a ride. Gripped the rope in one hand and held onto his hat with the other. The pair left Texas, crossed New Mexico, and entered Arizona. As they went, the storm bucked and roared. Bill just hung on and whispered to it, trying to gentle it, right, to calm it down. Despite the sweet nothings he murmured, it would not be tamed. If I tell someone nice things about themselves, it's called sweet nothings. Sometimes you'll hear them say, I whispered sweet nothings in their ear. All right, so this tornado crossed Texas, New Mexico, and into Arizona, right? Texas, New Mexico, all the way into Arizona. We're next, California there, right? They were almost in Nevada. So, right, here's Nevada. So they weren't going to go to California. It went Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. They were almost in Nevada when Bill sensed the storm was losing energy and relaxed some. That's when the tornado acted. It spun so hard that its tail cut a broad, deep canyon in the rocks. Today, folks call that the Grand Canyon. Finally, with its last bit of strength, the storm threw Pecos Bill. He tumbled head over heels, flew over the Mojave, and landed in California with a mighty wallop. When he'd caught his breath, he saw he'd hit the ground so hard there was a crater in it. If anyone else took a fall like that, he said to himself, they might have died. That's probably why nowadays people call his landing place Death Valley. And that's how Pecos Bill created the rodeo. Right? He was showing them how to do it. The rodeo is when we ride the animals and try and stay on their back. Anyway, that's the story. So answer the questions.